Hello. In these days of booming Britain, it's easy to forget that industrialization has had its failures as well as its successes. And some places have fallen by the wayside in the race towards prosperity and the good life. This is one of them. It's called Deliver, what there is of it. But prosperity has passed this way, for Deliver has known bonanza. Once people came from all over the country to share in its riches. And today, look at it. Exactly a century ago, it was at its peak. 800 miners worked here. And Deliver had this church and 2 chapels, 3 inns, a school, many houses, and hundreds of well-to-do residents. And today, there are just 7 houses and 12 people living here. Most of them are over 70. The youngest resident is over 30. There are no children. So, take a look at Deliver and remember, success is a passing thing. It's hard to see any signs of a flourishing past in Deliver today, for all the mill machinery was dismantled and carried away, along with what the remaining locals proudly recall was the 2nd biggest water wheel in Britain. Soon after, the people went, and their warm little homes on the mountainside began to crumble. The church, 100 years old, still stands, but it creaks with decay, hanging plaster and dropping slates, rotting Bibles and prayer books. And last August, someone came along and stole the church's big brass bell, stamped 1853 and weighing nearly 100 weight. That was the death knell. Good morning, Mr. Richards.
Good morning, sir.
If I can interrupt you for a bit.
Oh, it's quite all right, sir.
You were born here in Deliver,
Yes,
I
I was born here. Yes, 61 years ago.
What was the town, the village? Well, I suppose it was a village even then. What was it like in those rich days?
Oh, it was full of life here. They were paying the miners every month. And there was a big fair here. They were taking stuff from Llanidlos up here and Machynlleth. And the cobblers of Llanbrynmair were bringing the boats up for the miners. And there's another old chap from Machynlleth, he was selling the miners' hats. And I remember it was poor times when I was a boy. When I was a boy of 11 to 12, very poor in the village here. I remember the old women going out in the bogs. And they were gathering rushes. And they used to peel them at night. And I used to peel them with them. And they used to sell them 80 rush candles for a penny. And I remember when I was young in the old days, we used to have concerts, Steddfods, in the chapels here. And, you know, we used to go to the houses in parties now and have a good talk, hearing the old miners talking about the dangers they'd been underground in the Deliver mine here.
I'm told that in those days there were women working among the 800 miners in the mine here.
Oh, yes. There were 80 women here when the mine was at its peak. And the wages, they were working 12 hours. And the wages were 4 pence to 6 pence, 6 pence, and 8 pence a day.
And what did the men get?
The best miner, his wages was 15 shillings a week. Then they had young boys down the mine here, turning the ventilators. And they used to pay them something like 12 bob a week. And they were down 12 hours down underground. And we used to play on the old hills here. And many a time my parents used to tell me, don't you go over the Pendleigh side, it's dangerous.
Where's that?
That side, where old Sean the Go was hanged. John the blacksmith. He was hanged on the top there.
Was he?
Quite, well, opposite us now here.
Yes.
He murdered his wife and 2 children. He threw them down the bodies to an old shaft. And after many, many days, the miners found them. Old John the blacksmith was taken to Welshpool to stand his trial. And they condemned him condemned him to death. They brought him back on a white horse, right up to the gallows, and they hanged him there. And in 1937, to prove that the story was true, me and another fellow, a buddy of mine that used to work in the mine with me, Mr. Ivan William Davis, is living at the Van Mines now. We went there and we digged it up. It was only buried in...
Digged what up?
A skull in an iron cage. He was a blacksmith, you see. And the people used to say that he had to do the iron frame to put on his own head for hanging him. And there was a steel collar which you could adjust. And he was hung there. I think he was hung somewhere around 1716 on the 11th of April.
And you found the skull
I
in
found
the
the
iron
skull
collar?
in the iron collar. And I think it's in St. Fagans now. And that proved that the story was true. But you know, all people used to see a lot of ghosts around here.
Have you ever seen one?
No, never. No.
Do you believe that there are ghosts?
Yes, I do believe. I do believe in ghosts. Because my father told me he was a young man and he was going courting one time past the Star Inn here. Him and another fellow. The miner was working then. And as they were close to the church, of course it was dark, you know, they could see a little light coming up the road, just hobbing along, blue little flame. And it passed them. And it went straight into the mine's office. And from the office, it came out, and it went up over the old road, over the top of the hill. And now, in about a couple of weeks, a miner was drowned in the mine here. The mine was flooded. There was a big storm, you know, and the water cut into the mine. And now, as they were lowering the cages, there were 5 men, I think, in the cage going down. The cage went into the water. And the engine driver thought there was something wrong, you see. He took the cage up a bit. No, he left the cage in the water, but these other fellows, they opened the top of the cage and they came out on the top and they had their heads out of the water. There was a level opposite them, but this man that was drowned, he jumped into this level because this level is going uphill and he thought if he could go along a few yards, he'd be safe, but he was drowned. So they kept the pumps going for about a week or more. I'm not quite sure, but I know it was over a week. And they had the coffin, you see. The coffin came up the bottom road into the office, and then it was left there till they had the body. Then they brought the body out, put him in the coffin, and took him back over the mountain road to a place called Rhywdaviti. And that was the last fatal accident at the Deliver mine. That was somewhere about the 1890s.
Mr. Richards, I have enjoyed meeting you. Thank you very much for sparing the time. And I know you've got 2 more miles to do.
Yes, another 2 miles.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
This young man, Henry, is unusually talented. A firm, unhesitant line drawn with assurance and great skill. But he ought to be good because he's been practicing for about 200 years. He's one of a remarkable trio of automatons, built in the 18th century, long before electronics or transistors, before batteries, even before electricity. But in the field of pure applied mechanics, they've never been surpassed. Certainly, they have style, not just the mere clockwork precision that you might expect. We're all used to push buttons, to automation and electric brains, but there's something charming, almost touching about this young chap who's been producing his careful sketches during 3 lifetimes. And this is how he does it. An unusual behind-the-clothes look at his driving force. 3 sets of cams that give him that dexterous attention to detail. There's a second mechanism to bring all 12 cams into play and cause his eyes to follow the deft movements of his drawing hand. And when he stops to appraise what he's done, make him blow away any dust that's settled on his pad. Just watch. As an artist, he's skilled at 4 drawings, and, as you can see, he's a young man of his time. Louis XVI facing Marie Antoinette, Cupid in a chariot lashing out at a butterfly, and a finely shaded dog. As the young artist completes this sketch, he stops, considers, and then writes in a decisive hand, "Mon toutou," my doggy. And that diligent young chap has a big sister, Marianne. A musical sister, this one, sitting patiently at her little harmonium, waiting to be urged to play. And she plainly finds it an emotional moment. And when she plays, she really plays. None of that mechanical pianola tune grinding here. The fingers of a modern automaton merely follow the keys while the instrument does the playing. But this minuet depends upon these fingers, which must press the correct keys of a clavecin anyone could play with practice. The second brother, Charles, is perhaps the most gifted of all. He's a writer and can compose almost any message in a fine, regular 18th century hand. Like many writers, he can be temperamental. He won't tolerate any sudden change in temperature. A few degrees warmer or cooler, and he'll sulk, make spelling mistakes, neglect his spacing, even forget to write at all. As needed, he dips his quill into an inkwell of ordinary ink, a wonderfully natural movement followed by his head and his eyes. That careful hand is guided by mechanisms even more complex than those of his brother and sister. One directs the boy's wrist in 3 directions, another controls the upward and downward movement of the meticulous handwriting and animates his head and his eyes. Almost all the brass cams for his 44 letters and a full stop are the originals fashioned by Jacquet Droz, though 1 or 2, getting a little thin around the edges after 2 centuries of scribble, 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 have been reinforced by steel plates, filed down to match the original profiles. Only clothes and wigs have been replaced, and they remain in keeping with their time. Each month the clothes are cleaned and pressed, and a hairdresser comes to give them all a shampoo and set. As the immaculate Charles writes on, he carefully watches his pen, an expression full of attention. He writes in French normally, but he can manage a well-known phrase in almost any language.
Ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night, good Lord deliver us. Spooky, isn't it? I mean, whether you believe in that witch's stuff or not, it's easy to be big and tough in Piccadilly Circus. But when you're stuck in a place like this, oof, And at this time of year, too, Halloween, the bewitching eve, when any hobgoblin worth his salt is up to all sorts of magical mischief. When people a long time dead, they say, return to their old haunts. Well, even if it's a festive occasion, Halloween is a bit of a damn squib compared with Guy Fawkes Night. It more than makes up for it with these Halloween masks. You know, they're getting more imaginative, more flamboyant, and more gruesome every year. And it's here in this little shop in the heart of London's Theatreland that you'll find some of the most blood-curdling specimens of all. The shop's owner is Mr. Eric Gledhill. Why do you think it is that people have this peculiar fascination with horror?
I've never quite understood it. People will come in and they'll see a particularly repulsive thing and they'll say, I must have that, how much is it, and so on. And yet when it comes to taking it away, we have to put it in a bag, so as they only carry the bag and they don't actually touch the thing at all.
What sort of customers do you get generally?
Oh, we get some very, very interesting ones. I think the people I like to see most of all, I think, is the gentleman who comes in, a stockbroker or something in the city, complete with briefcase and umbrella. He comes in very austere. By the time he's been here a few minutes, he's like a little boy with a new toy. He goes home quite happy because he can dress himself up as something which he's forgotten about ever since he was a youngster.
Well, it's all just a bit of seasonal fun, I suppose, and it's hard not to get carried away with the spirit of the thing. Now, this one's my particular favorite. Looks like Mike Barrett before he had his haircut. I don't know what it does to the ghosts, but it scares the living daylights out of me.